SHM selaku moderator pada siang hari ini. Yang terhormat seluruh staf yang hadir dari Pusat Riset Sistem Produksi Berkelanjutan dan Penilaian Daur Hidup BRIN, dan yang terhormat seluruh tamu undangan pada acara siang hari ini. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Pertama-tama, marilah kita panjatkan puja dan puji syukur atas kehadiran Tuhan Yang Maha Esa yang telah melimpahkan rahmat serta karunia-Nya kepada kita, sehingga pada siang hari ini kita dapat melaksanakan acara tindak lanjut perjanjian kerjasama antara Pusat Riset Sistem Produksi Berkelanjutan dan Penilaian Daur Hidup BRIN dengan Pusat Studi Lingkungan Hidup Universitas Gadjah Mada melalui kuliah umum Guru Besar Murdoch, University Australia. Perkenalkan, saya Zakia, selaku pembawa acara pada siang hari ini, akan membacakan susunan acara pada siang hari ini. Yang pertama, pembukaan. Yang kedua, sambutan. Yang ketiga, inti acara. Yang kelima, ramah tamah. Dan yang terakhir, penutup. Baiklah, acara pada siang hari ini kita buka dengan berdoa menurut agama dan kepercayaan kita masing-masing. Berdoa, dipersilakan. Cukup. Acara yang selanjutnya yaitu sambutan oleh Kepala Pusat Riset Sistem Produksi Berkelanjutan dan Penilaian Daur Hidup BRIN kepada Bapak Nugroho Adi Sasongko, STMSC, Ph.D. Dipersilakan. Pak Nugroho, apakah bisa mendengar suara saya? Selamat siang, Pak Nugroho. Selamat siang, Pak. Apakah Bapak bisa mendengar suara saya?
Oke, tadi nggak bisa di-unmute soalnya mungkin karena belum diizinkan host. Ya, makasih Mbak Marta ya, Mbak Marta Raharja.
Baik, Bapak. Saya Zakiah, Bapak.
Oh, Zakiah. Ini tulisannya
Ya,
Marta
ini
Raharja.
akun Zoom-nya pakai punya Mas Marta.
Oke. Ini kayaknya kebalik-balik semua deh. Soalnya tadi Martin juga pakai akun Zoom yang lain. Makasih Mbak Zakiah. Selamat siang, salam sejahtera untuk semuanya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yang kami hormati tentu saja pimpinan dari Pusat Studi Lingkungan Hidup Universitas Gadjah Mada atau rekan-rekan dosen atau pejabat di lingkungan UGM. Soalnya UGM nih pejabatnya banyak yang ganti sekarang. Yang kami hormati rekan-rekan dari Pusat Riset Sistem Produksi Berkelanjutan dan Penilaian Daur Hidup. Dan yang kami hormati pula our special guest today, Professor Martin Anda. Thank you for coming to Indonesia, especially to Yogyakarta, your first city for this year to visit. It's nice to have you in Yogyakarta because it's very traditional city, and then it's very famous for education. I think you enjoy your stay in Yogyakarta, I believe. Like in Kyoto, Yogyakarta is almost the same like Kyoto when you visited Japan this year with your student. Today we have Professor Martin Anda from Murdoch University. This is a good time because of last week we just signed the cooperation agreement between BRIN and Pusat Studi Lingkungan di UGM, dan mungkin langkah baik kita ke depan bahwa kita punya kerjasama yang diawali dengan cukup signifikan progresnya. Baru tanda tangan hari Kamis kemarin kita sudah punya cooperation joint webinar hari ini, hari Senin, tanggal 19 September 2022. Mungkin demikian ya dari saya. Sekali lagi kami ucapkan terima kasih kepada teman-teman di UGM. Oh ya, satu lagi juga. Terima kasih juga kepada Ketua Kelompok KRIS 11 dan 12 yaitu adalah Dr. Tri Martini dan Dr. Forita yang telah membantu mengarrange kegiatan ini sehingga bisa berjalan dan mudah-mudahan berjalan dengan sukses sampai dengan akhir acara. And Martin, I also invite some alumni from Murdoch University because of I also inform many of alumni in the WhatsApp group, WhatsApp group of Murdoch University alumni in Indonesia. Perhaps some of them attends by Zoom today. So, makasih Mbak Zakia sudah memimpin acara hari ini. Salam hormat untuk teman-teman di Yogyakarta. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Pak Nugroho atas sambutannya. Sehat-sehat Bapak di sana. Kita lanjut ke acara selanjutnya yaitu inti acara. Acara pada siang hari ini akan dipandu oleh moderator oleh Bapak Wahyu Yun Santoso SHM Hum LLM. Kepada Pak Wahyu mungkin bisa langsung hadir di sini. Oke. Nanti dalam sesi selanjutnya akan dipandu penuh oleh Pak Wahyu dan nanti akan ada narasumber-narasumber hebat yang akan menemani Pak Wahyu pada siang hari ini. Mohon disimak. Monggo Pak Wahyu dipersilakan.
Ya, makasih Mbak Zakia. Rekan-rekan yang saya hormati, mulai dari yang paling banyak ya pesertanya, mahasiswa, ada S1, ada S2 dari Magister Pengelolaan Lingkungan, Bapak Ibu dari BRIN, Prof Martin, and Ma'am, I don't know your name, so sorry Ma'am. Oh, Joy, yeah. And Mrs. Joy, so welcome to Jogja. And welcome to UGM, PSLA UGM. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan, dan tidak lupa salam sehat untuk kita. Pada siang hari ini memang intinya sebenarnya satu tindak lanjut dari kerjasama antara PSLA UGM dengan Pusat Riset Sistem Produksi Berkelanjutan dan Penilaian Daur Hidup dari Badan Riset dan Inovasi Nasional BRIN, ya, satu lembaga ya tanda kutip bukan superpower tapi multi power malah ya. Kalau superpower itu terlalu lebih, tapi ini multi power karena semua balit bank itu dikumpulkan satu gitu ya. Jadi menjadi BRIN sehingga memang multi power seperti itu. Ini satu momen yang sangat baik dan kebetulan memang ini ada our distinguished speakers. He is a chair of environmental engineering in Murdoch University, Prof. Martin Anda, Ph.D. And then if we read a little bit about his academic journey, so he's quite familiar and popular with about the urban environment and then a green building initiative, something like that, right, Prof. Martin? So it is will be very insightful experience to have Prof. Martin in our public lecture. And so I invite you, Prof. Martin, to accompany me in the front of, and then saya akan campuran ya. So please, Prof. Martin, you can pick the chair that you like. Okay, thank you. Dan yang kedua nanti sebenarnya malah lebih kepada pembuka. Nanti ada keynote speaker dari Bapak Dr. Pramono Hadi selaku Kepala PSLH. Monggo Pak Pram untuk hadir di depan. Dan karena di sini ada ini sebutannya keren ya, kelris ya, kelompok riset. 11 dan 12 ini kalau kelas itu kayak kelompok riset nomor 11 dan 12. Tapi sebenarnya membawahi provinsi DIY 1, Provinsi Jawa Tengah 1. Sehingga kan saya undang Ibu berdua, monggo Putri dengan Bu Piko. Monggo Ibu Forita ya, Bu Forita nggih. Monggo Ibu. Dan nanti Pak Nugroho, kalau Pak Nugroho nanti masih bisa bergabung, setelah Prof. Martin saya akan mengundang Pak Nugroho untuk memberi tanggapan 5-10 menit gitu. Karena tadi baru pembukaan, saya pikir ini justru isunya karena materi hari ini adalah tackling innovation for tackling climate change, sehingga materinya akan sangat luas dan sangat bisa menyentuh isu-isu yang saat ini dijadikan pusat kajian dari PR SPB DPDH ini, sehingga nanti Pak Nugroho saya harapkan mungkin bisa memberikan tanggapan ya. Dan nanti setelah tanggapan singkat-singkat dari ketiga pemateri dari BRIN, nanti akan kami buka untuk materi diskusi ya. Sehingga saya harapkan teman-teman yang hadir di sini itu untuk aktif bertanya, karena apalagi yang magister pengelolaan lingkungan, basic studinya banyak gitu ya. Sehingga saya harapkan nanti kita bisa punya diskusi yang sangat bermanfaat. Oke, baik. Jadi kita mungkin langsung saja. I will give the first chance to Pak Pramono. Pak Pramono will be our keynote speakers, and then for around perhaps 20 to 30 minutes, so that the forum for Pak Pramono, and then afterward I will give the opportunity to you. So it is a minimum 30 minutes, so I'll give you the opportunity for that. And then after you, we will invite Pak Nugroho, Ibu Tri, and then Ibu Forita to give a short response, but related to the research and innovation. Perhaps what could be a potential if we talk about the tackling tackling the climate change. And so, and afterward we will have the discussion with the participants. Okay. So baik, yang pertama monggo langsung saja Pak Pramono, saya persilakan untuk menyampaikan keynote speech.
Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya memang ngambil di ujung gitu, karena setelah duduk ini yang serasi di dua tengah-tengah pas sekali gitu gambarnya gitu. Welcome Prof Martin to Yogyakarta. Actually in the rooftop we have photovoltaic for solar panel for this building. The capacity is around 40 kilowatt hours. 4 kilowatt hours, about 4,000 watts, but enough. I mean, if we talking about the green building, about the emission, about the commitment, our commitment to reduce CO2. Baterainya habis, Mas. Will be very relevant. Actually, I would say that our research pusat studi lingkungan hidup is born about tahun 79, berapa tahun ya? About 50, almost 50 years. And this is actually our commitment, Indonesian commitment, when the Ministry of Environment is established during the time, and with this research we doing the business, especially for education, for what is so-called pelatihan AMDAL, for impact assessment. And since last this year, 2 years, within 2 years, our university have a kind of KPI key performance indicator. One of the indicator is the research and collaboration. Of course, in this case, we will do something different with last or many years ago, and we will start collaboration with BRIN, and Pak Nugroho also said that within with 2-3 days after we signed, then right now we have already the activity. Anyhow, this is I would like to explain our research, and we have the student. Actually, the undergraduate student is MPKM. MPKM itu apa, Mas? Yeah, one of our KPI, and also student from MPL. Oh, MPL. Okay. Okay, and also with our Zoom, there are so many. I don't know. 100, yeah, it's already 100 apa namanya yang join. Okay, I think this actually it's not the keyword keynote speech, but I just want to introduce the vessel. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, matur nuwun Pak Pram. Well, I thought because Pak Pram and Prof Martin share common research interest, yeah, Prof Martin. But that will be fine. I think the focus goes to Prof Martin. So it is now the main topic for today. It is a public lecture with Prof Martin. So he will talk about the innovation for tackling with climate change, and because this has been global issues, the climate change, and so many interest subjects related to the climate change, from laws until the engineering aspect. So I think we can all can share the same interest today, and then we will have a fruitful discussion afterward. So I think just directly, Prof. Martin, the floor is yours. So around 30, or perhaps if you want to go until 45 minutes, then we will very happy to hear you. Okay. Okay, so please, you can use this or this.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Selamat siang. And thank you, Prof. Wai, for your introduction, and thank you, Prof. Ramono, for having us here at your wonderful university, and thank you, Ibu Tri Martini, for organizing this today. So very wonderful to be here with everyone. It's a beautiful university that you have here. So terima kasih for having us, and thank you, Ibu. Thank you. Yes. So it's very nice to arrive at this building and see straight away that you are making a green building here. Yes. And this is very nice to see this. We are trying these projects in Australia as well. So this is very impressive to see 40 kilowatts of solar on the roof. So maybe after we go up and have a look, I always get very excited about solar energy, because this is one of our pathways to the tackling climate change. If we can reduce our dependency on fossil fuels, then solar energy is one way we can do this. And we have solar energy everywhere in the world. So solar energy can be for making a peaceful world of cooperation as well, because not everyone has fossil fuels. So this is a way forward to world peace, if we can make solar energy for everyone. And at my university, Murdoch University, greetings from Murdoch University in Australia, in Perth, in Western Australia. We have some solar energy on the roof also, but so far we only have 30 kilowatts. So congratulations for having this very nice big system on the roof here. The other important thing that I learned from Pakwayo when we came here today was you have a very good rainwater harvesting system. So you are collecting the rainwater from the roof and putting this in the tank on the ground. And I wanted my university to do this for many years, but still they don't do it. And this also is a very important function for a more sustainable approach to surface hydrology and groundwater management. Because one of the things that the rainwater tank is doing is when you have the peak rainfall event, and if you get too much runoff, then you may get flooding in your city. So the rainwater tank is a good technology for reducing the runoff intensity, especially if you can manage it so that, and this is where some interesting new technologies are coming. If you can predict with some smart technology the rainfall event coming, if you can predict the clouds are coming with the rain, you know exactly when it's coming. If your tank is full, well, then you have a sensor that will discharge the rainfall, discharge the water in the tank before the next rain event comes. And if you can discharge this maybe to a big soak well ahead of the event, or if you can use it productively on the irrigation or the toilet flushing or other internal uses, then the tank level can go down and it will receive the next rainfall event. But if it's full, then it won't serve any purpose. So there's some nice technologies that can help utilize this. And in Australia, in Melbourne, we have a new urban development that makes use of this technology with sensors installed across all of the development. This one is called Aquarivo. And I won't talk about that one today. I'll talk about another groundwater study. But anyway, this was very nice to see this green building that you have here in Yogyakarta, UGM. It's very nice to see this. So before I start this short talk as well, I should say we had a very nice visit the last couple of days to Borobudur and Prambaran, and just seeing all of the beautiful art and history of Yogyakarta and Central Java. So very beautiful to see this. Unbelievable how over hundreds of years this is created through the culture of the society. And it's very nice to see as well the beautiful patterns in the batik that we see so commonly here. I like this. And this one is almost like a batik shirt, but it is the artwork from the First Nations people in Australia, the Indigenous people, the Aboriginal people of Australia. So, the people in Australia sometimes are called different names. And we have many different tribal areas in Australia. And this one is typically from the central Australian regions. So not central Java, but central Australia. And, from the desert country. And these patterns as well are telling many different stories. Many different stories. It's telling stories about the water holes and the animals that are coming to drink there. So there's many stories of the dream time and the history there as well. And today, a very important research study was announced in Australia about the impacts of climate change. And we are seeing the impacts of climate change in many parts of Australia and in many different ways. And one of the impacts that is now being understood is the impacts on the heritage of the traditional people in Australia. So, like here at Borobudur and Brambanam is very different, and in Australia is very different as well, but they have ancient burial sites and ancient rock art. And now the climate change, they understand, is impacting this as well. So we see the impacts of climate change in many different ways, and it's good to be able to work together, different countries working together and different universities, so we can share the knowledge and the experiences and see what learnings we can take from each other and bring back to our students and our universities, and see how we can learn to tackle these problems that climate change is creating. So it was very nice before COVID hit, before the pandemic started, to be able to bring my students here to Yogyakarta several times in a program in Australia we have. It's called New Colombo Plan, and it is by the Australian government. And this means that some of my students, they can come and travel to Indonesia. And so several times we came here to Yogyakarta, and at that stage I didn't know anyone at UGM. So now I'm very glad to meet you all here at UGM, because now I'm hoping next time we can work on some projects together. But before, I was coming here and working with Instapa. And one of the professors there, she was explaining to me the problems of groundwater here around Yogyakarta. So we had a look at this. We went out and we saw some of the farmers and how they're taking the groundwater for the irrigation, and we're having a look at some of the wells around the city in Yogyakarta as well. And so then one of my final year students in environmental engineering, she became very interested in this, and she asked if she could do her final year thesis to make a study on this with Instapa and just see what opportunities there exist. So today, just in my presentation, I just wanted to mention two technologies that we study as examples in environmental engineering in Australia that I think are also used in Indonesia and of interest here. One is groundwater recharge techniques, and the other one is desalination of, well, it can be groundwater, but it can be seawater also, and we use a small-scale reverse osmosis technology powered by solar energy. So I just thought I'd talk a little bit about those today. Yes, and here in this first slide, you can see the title there, Groundwater Sustainability in Yogyakarta. And this was a study done by one of my students, Nishi, in her final year undergraduate project. And I hope it's of interest, because she did this a few years ago, and I thought, well, because I was coming to Yogyakarta, maybe we have a look at this again. And when we get to the end, we can see her recommendations. And maybe from her recommendations, if these are still relevant today, maybe we can find a project like that we can work on together, if this may be of interest. So here is her title slide, Development of Sustainable Groundwater Management Plan in Yogyakarta, Recharge and Remediation Techniques. And her name was Nishi Verma, but she's graduated now and she's working as an environmental engineer in Western Australia. Maybe she may like to come back and visit again. So this one slide is an introduction to the problem and the aims, and So what we learnt at that time is that the groundwater resources in Yogyakarta were becoming depleted. And so the aim then was to what sort of sustainable management strategy could be developed. So that was her project, to look at that, you know. So we understood at that time the issues were the increasing population, industrial activity, and maybe the over-abstraction of the groundwater. But if this is combined as well with declining rainfall from the climate change, well then these are the type of impacts that we have to work with, and we have to develop a management plan. Thank you. So you can see here some of the objectives and constraints to conduct the various investigations, to collect the data, and to review what remediation and recharge technologies may be relevant. So there are some constraints as well. So well, she had some constraints, and there may be issues in terms of getting sufficient information. And so I think there's probably no need for me to explain the site here, because I'm sure you must all study this anyway. But anyway, this is what Nishi learnt during her stay here. She was trying to understand the groundwater hydrology and the surface hydrology conditions around Yogyakarta. So one of the ideas is to look at the opportunities of groundwater recharge and just see where these can be applied. And so she was looking at the way different uses of groundwater were occurring in Yogyakarta, and in fact she even compared that how we use groundwater in Perth as well. So the interesting thing in this study is that Perth, where I come from, our city, and Yogyakarta, they have many similarities, because in both cities we make extensive use of groundwater. But I don't know how serious the impact of climate change is here in Yogyakarta, but in Perth it's very serious. So we, up until the 1970s, in our city in Perth, we could get close to 100% of our water supply from the surface catchment dams in the nearby hills. So I guess here your Mount Merapi, although it's much bigger than our hills in Perth, in a way, this is from a hydrology point of view, it might be similar. Our hills is where we are getting the runoff, and we're getting some surface catchment dams. But what's happened is, since the 1970s, our climate has been drying very, very quickly. And so by the 1990s, we'd had an annual average 20% decline in rainfall. But by now, it is closer to 50% sometimes decline in rainfall. But the trouble is, in the catchments running into the surface catchment dams, the 50% decline in rainfall will translate into an 80% decline in runoff. So because they're wooded catchments, they're forests, and so you have an increasing exponential increase in evaporative losses as well from the forest biomass as the rainfall declines. So we get less runoff into the catchment dams, and so now we typically only have about 10% of the urban water supply can be met by the surface catchment dams. So, you know, from the 1960s, groundwater bores increased, and then by 2006, they realised that it was no longer possible to meet all of the water needs of Perth with the surface catchment dams and the groundwater. So there had to be a new solution, and this was building seawater desalination plants. So now in Perth, 50% of our water supply comes from solar desalination plants from the seawater. So we're like the Middle East now in Perth. we're almost like a desert city because the climate change reduced the rainfall by so much. So I just wanted to compare that, you know, Perth and Yogyakarta, we have some very similar challenges. And so, but the other challenge as well for the groundwater that Nishi was able to discover here in the next slide, you can see that a big issue was the groundwater contamination as well. And so she did a lot of collection of samples, and it seemed to indicate that the various parameters such as nitrites, TDS, fluoride and so on, were indicating that the contamination was probably coming from livestock wastes, poultry slaughterhouses, and so on. And so how do you manage this? How do you find a solution to reduce the contamination of the groundwater? So this is a very difficult problem, and you know, because of course these sources of pollution are very diffuse and spread all across the landscape, and it's much easier to manage if those pollution sources are concentrated and coming from one point. And by the 1960s in Perth, for example, where we had many livestock wastes feeding into the river that goes into our city, we were able to identify those as point sources of pollution, and the legislation was enacted that they were no longer able to discharge the pollution directly into the river. So we could turn off those pollution sources, but when it's more diffuse, it's probably a lot more difficult to manage that. So maybe this is a big challenge in Yogyakarta. I don't know what's happening now, but it may still be quite a challenge to address this contamination. And so if we go to the next, well, this just, you know, is the list of her methods. She actually went and spoke with many people around Yogyakarta, and she measured the water depth and hydraulic conductivity in some wells. She took samples, and she tried to understand what the stakeholder values were, you know, of people around Yogyakarta. And so then what she started to do once she had collected and analysed all this data, she began to understand what are the opportunities for groundwater recharge and where could this effectively occur. So she evaluated a number of sites, and she thought this could be a good opportunity in some areas. So if we go to the next slide, and again, she was collecting data on different of contaminants. So this one was understanding where the contamination was occurring at the different sites. We go to the next one, and again, just more data she collected, analysing different parameters and trying to understand where the critical areas were in order to understand what were the sources of the pollution. And again, and so then we looked at different options for the groundwater recharge, and these diagrams are two different methods for groundwater recharge. This is what we learned in Australia over the years. Perth is not a big leader in groundwater recharge, but we now do have one project, a very big one. But Adelaide in Australia, which is the capital city of South Australia, and maybe Adelaide is more akin to Yogyakarta, but they have been doing groundwater recharge for many, many years. They have many different projects. And so that diagram on the left there is showing how you do deep well injection. And this is one method of groundwater recharge where you force the water that you want to recharge back into the groundwater aquifer under pressure down a well. And then the second one there is the use of infiltration basins. And this is like a slower method, but it occurs over a larger area. And so this has been practiced in Western Australia also in some trial projects. But the big project we do is the one on the left, deep well injection. And so we've been injecting deep down. And we do this with, it might be surprising, but we do this with treated sewage. So we treat from the wastewater treatment plant to a very high standard. In fact, you could drink it because normally the wastewater in Perth is treated to a secondary level and then pumped out to sea. But if we take that secondary treated effluent and we treat it to a tertiary standard, which is when you are using something like reverse osmosis. So we build a very large reverse osmosis treatment plant, and we take the sewage and we, in very, very large volumes, and we then pump that into the groundwater. And this is done in several countries around the world, not many of course, but probably the best example is in Orange County in California, where they have been doing that for many, many years because of course they have some massive population growth there and they have drying climate. So they started doing the groundwater recharge many decades ago, and in Tucson, Arizona as well. But Orange County uses the deep well injection and Tucson, Arizona uses the infiltration basin on the right. And so in Perth, we're more like Orange County. We use the deep well injection. And so this is one of our long-term strategies, along with seawater desalination, to address the climate change and the drying climate. And one time when I came here to Yogyakarta, when Bryn was previously known as BPPT, we visited the Barron Technopark. Barron. And so there they had some demonstration projects on the solar desalination of the seawater and some recharge project. So we were able to visit that as well. So here in the next slide again is another comparison of the infiltration basins and the injection wells. These are just two methods of groundwater recharge. And it just depends, like if you have sandy soils, like we do in Perth, then infiltration basin is very good. But if you have clay soils, for example, then injection well may be better, because then you can inject into the aquifer at high pressure. So if we go to the next slide, and this is just some of the costs and benefits and some of the issues that you need to address for different groundwater recharge. And then these are some of the sites that Nishi identified around Yogyakarta where she thought this might be useful to try to the groundwater recharge. And just proposing a fairly simple technology, maybe this could be managed locally by local communities to do the, I guess like an infiltration, but capturing the surface runoff and recharging it. So it's a little bit like infiltration basin, but with treatment. So you're setting it up like a sand filter and allowing some treatment before it infiltrates into the groundwater. So this was one idea. And I think, I don't know if this is, maybe there's some projects like this already in Yogyakarta, but maybe this is a nice project we could work on together. And I think that is almost the last slide. Just some recommendations. So Nishi thought that some more work should be done on chemical analysis to assess the remediation techniques of any runoff waters, and then have a pilot project on what people decide may be the best technology. So maybe this is something we can do together. Ibu Yuriana, who we worked with at Instapa, she moved now to Binus University in Jakarta, but she did a follow-up study and she did continue to collect data and analyse it after we left, and she had some more findings really which reinforced the work that we did earlier. So she's continued to collect data, and maybe this could be useful as well for the future work. And I think she's just about to publish that paper on the left there. So then this would may be useful for the future studies. And I think that is the end of the first part of my talk. So if there's, does anyone have any questions or any comments they would like to make?
Okay, so would you like to have a discussion first before we continue to the second session?
We can, if you like. The second part is a little bit
Yeah,
different.
because I think it's very. I think it's a good plan to have a short discussion first, or perhaps any response from Putri, Bu Forita, or perhaps Pak Pram, because the case study that you mentioned is already been 3 years ago.
Yes.
Right, 2 years ago, and then I think there are so many aspects that it could be left behind, or missed in some place. I mean, for example, I think to understand that we have a similarity between Perth and Jogja, right? I mean, both of the underground water goes to drinking water. In here, we are not apply that as a drinking water. Indeed, the government body is name is Perusahaan Daya Air Minum. So drinking water regional body, but it's actually not not cannot be used yet, not drinkable,
Yeah.
It's only standard water.
Yes.
Right, so I mean, if you mention about in Perth, and then because you treat the wastewater, and then even you can drink afterward, right?
Yeah, well, you can, but the people aren't doing
Yes,
it.
they think
They're
something
thinking,
else.
if you tell the people they're going to drink the sewage, they go, no, I don't want
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I don't want it.
But in here,
Yeah.
we cannot even, the water is not drinkable.
Yeah.
So it cannot be compared.
Yeah.
A fairly comparison
That's
between
right.
Perth
No.
and Indonesia and
Oh,
Jogja. But
yeah.
that isn't the problem.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
also, in 2018 until 2020, there's a lot of new hotels in Jogja region.
Yeah.
And that's also create the problem of the groundwater. And aside that, in the recharge area in Sleman, actually, the problem is unsolved, because the recharge area actually already been full by the housing area, housing complex. Yeah, that is I think the problem in here. But please,
I just want to add some information that when we're talking about the groundwater in Yogyakarta, actually we have the main groundwater system is from Merapi, Sleman area, and the city of Yogyakarta and Bantul. The others is the source is not from the Mount of Merapi. Why Mount of Merapi? Because it is important. Because this is the active volcano, yeah, active volcano. They give more porosity in the landscape, and the aquifer is quite deep, until maybe 120 meters deep, and but the problem is the withdrawal of water, especially for unconfined aquifer, is too much. Why? Because if you look at the people, almost every host here have one dig well privately. But when the season, the season is coming, and the water level is start sink down, and then they easily to inject with deeper, and this is quote unquote free without the government intervention. So then, why? And they use for every domestic purposes. But actually, when you look at the characteristics of flood and rainfall, actually we have a kind of intermittent, because it's very steep slope, and most of the volume of the runoff goes to ocean. That's why we have actually to capture with many small dam, and then this will be very useful if you can use surface water for watering this problem. but it's not. This project is not start. I don't know when, because when we're talking about the scarcity of the water, actually the Jogja is one of the example. It's very fluctuative, especially for groundwater.
You want to respond?
Yeah,
Prof.
this
Martin,
is very interesting. This surface water catchments like this, we install them in the landscape as a future opportunity. And this is a strategy that in Australia, we call it water sensitive urban design. So we put the swales and the basins, we can't do it in the old city because too many buildings, too many roads, but whenever we make a new development now, we try to see the opportunity how to capture the runoff and infiltrate locally. So this is usually the strategy. And when we go in the countryside, because in the city in Perth, the soils are very sandy. So this is very good because you can infiltrate a lot locally, very quick, high permeability. But when we go in the countryside and see the farmers, often the soil might be less permeable, maybe some clay soils. And so the farmers are quite commonly using the surface catchment dams to harvest the runoff.
Yeah.
And then they can use this for the irrigation as well. So this is a useful technology as well in the countryside for the farmers.
Yeah, but Prof. Martin, since we have a kind of ash from the Merapi, because when they collected in the surface, they become very impermeable. So then, if we dug kind of sumber resapan apa?
Yep.
Yeah, it cannot be penetrated into vertical.
It gets clogged.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That is the problem, because the depth of the layer is around 6 meters, yeah, about 7 meters and something like that. But the thick is around half meter something.
Yeah.
But if we can not put this into account, then the waters cannot be infiltrate or percolate to the deep groundwater.
One of the techniques we sometimes use in Australia is you put a collection ahead of the main surface catchment dam. So you capture the silt, the first runoff in the rainfall event, and then the overflow is going into the dam. So you settle out some of the suspended solids, or even the larger gross particulate matter like the leaves. For example, the leaves even are settling there. And then only the overflow, which is a bit cleaner, this goes into the main dam. Then this might reduce the clogging.
Okay, so I think as Pak Martin said, it is the floor session. So saya nggak perlu menerjemahkan ulang ya. Saya pikir karena sudah apalagi mahasiswa UGM kan sudah accept-nya tuh di atas rata-rata semua gitu. Silakan ada yang mau bertanya enggak? Anyone? Pak Martin tadi bercerita mengenai studi yang beliau bimbing 3 tahun lalu gitu ya. 3 tahun lalu perbandingan antara di Jogja dan di Perth ya. Terutama untuk kaitannya dengan groundwater ya. Sistem air bawah tanah. Meskipun memang tadi ada beberapa catatan bahwa sebenarnya misalkan Pak Pram tadi menegaskan kan salurannya sebenarnya berbeda dengan yang tadi disampaikan kan sebenarnya Sleman, kota, kemudian Wates. Nah, padahal beda cerita, beda jalur gitu loh. Padahal satu jalurnya itu semestinya Sleman, kota Jogja, dan Bantul. Itu satu jalur yang notabene urusan di Sleman, daerah resapan air yang notabene banyak pemukiman di sana. Terus kemudian kota yang begitu padat dengan untuk akses air bawah tanahnya itu juga menjadi sulit karena kontaminasi. Tadi E. coli ya diceritakan, dan memang itu kejadian, itu kondisi di Jogja, di kota Jogja. Sementara kalau di Bantul, daerahnya memang sandy ya, lebih berpasir, Bantul. Sehingga memang notabene kualitas air antara Sleman dengan Bantul itu malah hitungannya banyak Bantul, bagus Bantul. Karena tersaring dengan konteks struktur tanahnya ini, dan sekaligus istilahnya lebih dekat ke pantai kan, seperti itu, lebih landai gitu ya. Nah ini posisi yang notabene kemudian tadi dibandingkan sama Prof Martin mengenai kondisi deep perth itu memang kelangkaan air itu sangat terasa ya di beberapa musim gitu ya, terutama perubahan akibat climate change ya, itu sangat terasa, sehingga ada kegiatan untuk salinasi air laut ya, yang untuk menyediakan air baku. Meskipun tadi sebenarnya mungkin teman-teman bisa bertanya itu, jadi ada storm water, saya nggak tahu juga nih, bisa ditanyakan. Storm water infiltration itu apa maksudnya? Jadi ada dua metode tadi kan, yang bikin semacam embung, terus bikin, nah ini nggak tahu nih, udah nggak bisa. Bikin semacam embung dan bikin ada semacam ya sumur infiltrasi gitu. Yang kemudian itu fungsinya untuk setidaknya memecah contaminated water seperti itu. Ada yang mau tanya nggak? Silakan. Ini udah saya resumekan nih. Oke, kalau tidak, Prof Martin, I think we shall continue to your second session first, because the student, I think they already understand too much, and understand a lot, and then they will ask later after the second session.
Yeah.
They already know and then well aware of your concern.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent.
Oh ya, Pak Nugroho, masih bergabung Pak Nugroho? Masih di mute atau malah di mute?
Sorry. Ini di blog, saya peserta biasa, jadi saya nggak di
Pak Nugroho dijadikan sebagai pembicara. Pak Nugroho, kami setting sebenarnya nanti ada tanggapan dari Pak Nugroho sebagai kepala pusat risetnya. Tapi untuk yang tambahan pertama itu mungkin ada, biar tidak terputus lah, ada isu-isu tertentu yang mungkin Pak Nugroho bisa angkat, dan termasuk ini peluang-peluang hal yang bisa dikerjasamakan ke depan atau bisa jadi fokus studi ke depan, Pak Nugroho, untuk tanggapan.
Ya, makasih Pak Moderator. Izin, thank you Martin for visiting to have a presentation, nice presentation. As you know that you visited our facilities in Baron Technopark several years ago, and then we got some information regarding the water desalination system and also some renewable energy technology profile in Yogyakarta. Regarding your sharing about the groundwater sustainability, maybe we know that the water footprint is very important to show the extent of the water use in relation to consumption by the people. We discuss about the water footprint here, and most of the countries, especially like developing countries like Indonesia, we didn't calculate very clearly how much we consume every day from the ground water, how much we pump up to the surface, and then most of the water used today in Indonesia, we not include in the water bill. It means that it's free from the natural. And then we know that this is just a sharing. Water footprint by the global average last year to 2021 is about 3.8 ton of water per day. And then some of the countries has consumed more than that, like US 6.8 ton per day. Perhaps Australia also is about 5 something. And in Indonesia, it's a very wide range. In the rural area, maybe less or more, and in the big cities, it's maybe more and less. So the variation is very wide. And then every year, actually, the UNEP release the report about the global water footprint. And then I think most of the information about the global water footprint not represents all of the countries like Indonesia, because they just collect the information from the big city like Jakarta. If our research center and then the PSL, Pusat Studi Lingkungan, Research Center for Environment in UGM, and then also Murdoch University want to establish the nice collaboration, working together. Maybe we can start with the water footprint in the big cities in Indonesia and Australia. We can compare the water footprint in Jakarta, in Surabaya, in Yogyakarta, also in Perth, maybe in some other area also, like in Singapore, because Murdoch has the university in Singapore, and also in the Middle East, because Murdoch also has the university in Dubai, if I remember. So we can compare all of the cities, big cities, representative regarding water footprint. One of our staff in our research center in BRIN also now continuing the study, her study in Wageningen University in Netherlands, specialized in the water footprint. And also maybe we can also measure, make the collaboration to have the better understanding of the water footprint in our new capitals in IKN, Ibu Kota Nusantara, because of many debatable and discussion regarding what the future water footprint in our new capital in Kalimantan. So we can compare with Jakarta. What's the water management in the future in our new capital in IKN? Because of water is very important every day. And then as Professor Mantin mentioned that Perth is one of the example that now more than 50% of the water supply coming from the water desalination system. It's very interesting. It's more like Middle East like now. It's very desert, dry area. All of the water, 50% coming from the water desalination. I wish Indonesia not like Perth in the future, because it's very expensive to produce the water from the water desalination system like in Perth. And then we can learn from Perth how they manage the water in the city. Thank you.
Please, if you want to respond.
Yeah, this is a very true point Pak Nugroho has said, is that the seawater desalination, because here in Yogyakarta, the sea is very close also like Perth, but building the seawater desalination plant is very expensive. And where I live in Perth is another technology actually that is something that may not be so expensive but is very useful, because when we talk about the groundwater recharge technologies, this enables the groundwater aquifer to be more sustainable and enables the people to continue the same practices that they've been doing, having the wells and the farmers pumping for irrigation. This type of thing will just continue as normal if you can make the recharge more effective and reduce the contamination. It means we can continue business as usual while still having the impacts of climate change, and maybe this is one way of managing it. But we can take it one step further if the people in the community might be willing to change a little bit the practice also. And this may be the middle road option that may not be as expensive as seawater desalination. So what we do is we take maybe a small section of Perth or a small section of Yogyakarta, and we look at the topography, we look at the gradients, we look how the surface water runoff is occurring there, and we identify what is the best groundwater recharge technique for this small area of the city. And so this is what we did in the village where I live. It was a redeveloped urban area, and so then all the stormwater system is designed carefully, so this can be recharged, the rainfall runoff can be recharged off into the surface superficial aquifer, the shallow aquifer, and recharge the groundwater. And then what you do then is you have a bore in that neighbourhood, we call it a community bore or a share bore, and you put the submersible pump down there, and then you're pumping it up, and you're having a reticulation network. So you just put a new pipe around the neighbourhood, and then if the people are using wells, they can have a new water supply to reduce their dependency that is coming from the groundwater aquifer, where you're getting really effective recharge. And you can calculate in the model how much recharge you're getting and then how much you're taking out. And you can develop the sustainable yield model. And then you can work out how much each household or each farm should take. Or maybe there's a factory there, how much are they allowed to take? And you can build a model around that. And this is what we did in the village area where I live. And so then for the irrigation on our landscape, we can turn on the irrigation system, certain, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, and that is our allocation. This is another model. And so then we are not using, for example, in Perth, if we have that system, we don't use the seawater desalination plant, like Pak Nugroho said, is very expensive. We're not using that water to irrigate the garden or flush the toilet, something like this. We're using the shared groundwater system. So this can be an intermediate technology, and maybe this is another one we could look at it as a pilot project in Yogyakarta, and maybe we work together on this one. And then, anyway, that is another one to look at. So thank you, Professor Nugroho, for pointing this one out.
Martin, I just want to add one more thing. Can I?
Yes, please, Pak Nugroho.
Yeah, just several months ago, I met some people from Semarang, from Bapeda, Provinsi Jawa Tengah, Central Java Province. We discussed about some of the major problem in Central Java, like sinking of the northern part of Java Islands, and then the rate of the sinking of the land in the northern part of Java is very terrible. I mean, more than 12 centimeters every year in some part, like Pekalongan. And some of the indication by the preliminary research mentioned that it's the main problem because of the water pumping, water consumption from the groundwater is very high. I mean, the people pump up the water from the groundwater is very huge amount. And then maybe we can start from this project, because I think, Martin, you visited the Pekalongan several years back, and you understand that the problem in the northern part of Central Java especially, and not only in Central Java, but most of the northern part of the Java Island. And then maybe we can collect some of the data from several cities in the northern part of Java, start from Jakarta, Cirebon, Pekalongan, Semarang, Surabaya. We can compare also with Yogyakarta and also with Perth, and we can estimate the water footprint in every region in average year by year. We do extrapolation and we can release some policy recommendation to the government. I think that's my idea for the next collaboration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Nugroho. Yeah, I think Pak Martin previously when he came to first to PSLH and then we discussed about Pekalongan, yeah, Pak Martin. And Pak Martin already aware about the case that Pak Nugroho mentioned. Yeah, thank you, Pak Nugroho. I think that's a very, very good topic to discuss later. Okay, so you want to continue with the second slide?
Continue.
Okay.
Yeah, I should probably tell a little story too about.
Mas Mata yang materi kedua.
Yeah, I just a short story. How I met Pak Nugroho was when he was doing his Ph.D. In Japan, and he also came to Murdoch University, and he did some of his research with Murdoch University in Perth as well. So I was able to meet him then, and he was also working with one of our professors there, Professor Navid Mohammadi, and he was looking at biofuels. So I was able to learn from Pak Nugroho something about biofuels as well, sustainable energy from biofuels. And he did a very nice project with our students when Pak Nugroho was at Murdoch University. He was able to share this with our students, and because we had a unit there called Transition to Post-Carbon Society. And so Pak Nugroho, he led a very nice project. It was this was a very good way to meet Pak Nugroho. Thank you. So now we go to looking at another technology. We teach with our students in Murdoch University's solar-powered reverse osmosis desalination. And because we had that program in Australia called New Colombo Plan, we were able to bring our students to Indonesia on about 5 different trips. And what I learned was in the eastern part of Indonesia, there are many isolated communities and villages that are very poor, and they have impacts there of climate change as well, because they have all of these islands here in eastern Indonesia, and there's many thousands of them, I learned. There's many thousands of small islands and many small villages that are dependent on the well on the island for having their drinking water. And so with maybe rising population, but also rising sea level because of the global warming, then you're getting the saltwater intrusion into the aquifer. And so over time, the community well on the island is becoming saline and brackish. So it's not so good for drinking. And so we started working with some colleagues in Makassar, in Sulawesi, to see if this solar-powered seawater desalination technology could be useful. But it was also good for my students to learn about this technology and learn how reverse osmosis membrane works, learn how the pumping is used on that, and how much energy is required, and if you can use solar energy. And so we worked with a company called Murdoch, who manufacture these units in Perth, and we made a portable kit. And if we have a look on the next slide, you can see here the system components. So number 1 is the solar photovoltaic module. Number 2 is the controller battery pack. And then number 3 is the seawater pre-filter. This is just a cartridge filter and the pumping unit there. and then the reverse osmosis membrane itself there, which is the long silver cylinder, and then the black box is an energy recovery device, because the way reverse osmosis works is that you have to use very high pressure to pump through the membrane, the seawater, to remove the salt ions, and then you discharge a reject stream to atmosphere. So this is a big loss of energy. So instead of discharging to atmosphere, you discharge to an energy recovery device, and you reclaim that energy back onto the pump stroke through the RO membrane, which needs a lot of pressure. So you can actually increase the efficiency of the device that way. And so then you produce the product water number 5, and then you get fresh drinking water. So it's very remarkable to see this in a small scale like this. You put the intake pipe into the seawater, you turn on the unit when the solar energy is available, and you produce fresh water. And so this is very nice just to see that happening. And of course, this happens at a very large industrial scale now in many cities around the world. And this is how many cities, many coastal cities around the world, and the Middle East, of course, has been doing this for many years, and in their coastal cities. And we had to start doing this as well in Perth, because we had no more rainfall. It was not enough. So we started using these devices. But the nice thing is that because of the large-scale applications, the price is coming down. So year by year, these systems get cheaper. And now what we're thinking is, if we can get this technology to be even cheaper and maybe mass-produced, maybe it can be one solution, maybe combined with rainwater tanks in these island villages. They may have a small village-scale unit like this that can help solve the water problem. Because the other, of course, what the alternative is the plastic water bottles. So we have all these plastic water bottles on our table today, and in the islands now, instead of taking from their well, they import plastic water bottles for their drinking water. And so this is very expensive for them. You know, they use what they call a gallon. They get the big drum, 19 litres, or they sometimes bring in a bigger tank on the barge, on the ship. But it's very expensive because these people on the islands, they're very poor. And so what we did when we brought our students there is we tried to develop a business model with the village to see what price are the people willing to pay for their drinking water. Like in this plastic bottle on your table, how much does that bottle of water cost? Because that is how much the people are paying for their water. And so the students had to calculate the business model. What should be the payback period of this system that the village is willing to bear, so that the price of the water can be the same as in the bottle, in the plastic bottle. And then if we can develop a business model around this, then they can have their own village water supply system instead of bringing the plastic bottles. Because what else happens with the plastic bottles? You get plastic waste all over the ocean. So they're not always doing that, of course. They're not always just throwing it in the ocean, but somehow the plastic has to go somewhere. Sometimes it ends up just, you know, around the village. So this was an interesting project. And so then we looked at one island in particular, Nusa Lembongan off Bali, and because this island was getting so much tourism and so many hotels, like you said earlier here in Yogyakarta, many hotels as well, and all of these hotels are taking the water from their well. And so on Nusa Lembongan, the island well aquifer was going down and down and down, and getting more brackish from the saltwater intrusion. So there was a small school there with many children in the school, and their well in the school was getting brackish. So they couldn't drink the water. So the children were not getting enough drinking water. And so this is not good for your health. So then one of my students, he created a project with the local community group on the island called Bottle for Bottle. And they were trying to stop the plastic pollution. And they made a project with the Surfing Association, because, you know, many people go surfing on Nusa Lembongan. And so they made a project together, and they made an application to the Australian government, and the Australian government gave the money for the seawater desalination plant for the school. And this is the model here that describes how much water is needed and how big the system should be for the school, and what is the capital cost, and what is the payback period, and so on. And so that system was built and is now delivered there, but because of COVID, you know, there were many delays. So we still weren't able to go back yet and see how the system is functioning. So so in December, I want to come back with my students to Nusa Lembongan, and I want to come back to Yogyakarta if we can make a project together, and then also Makassar, where we first started this project. So hopefully we can make a project and work together in December. So then I think, what is the next slide there? Is that's the end. So any questions? Any discussion we should have on this one?
Yeah, any discussion or perhaps a response from Ibu Tri and Bu Forita? Okay, please. Anyone? This is quite expensive, yeah, Prof. Martin. Still very expensive.
It's still very expensive,
Yeah, still very
but then
expensive.
we have to think, what happens when a whole village loses its drinking water? When they no longer have their drinking water, what do? People have to drink water. So then the people are drinking from plastic bottles. And is this sustainable?
Yeah.
You know, so then, and because the village, it becomes dependent on importing the plastic water, and then some other company somewhere else is making a lot of profit, you know, because the community lost its own water resource because of the impact of climate change. But can we develop a business model for a new drinking water system that the village can own? They can have their own system back.
But how about 90,000 Australian dollar, and then is it already included the maintenance cost, or only the first installment?
That was the capital cost, but that system there is for a whole school, so it's a much bigger system, and we think over time the cost will come down. And so, for example, if you have a combination of some rainwater tanks, maybe the brackish water now is only used for the washing and the toilet flushing and the irrigation, and maybe you only have a very small desalination system for drinking water, and maybe there's a system in the village where they fill up the gallons or the plastic bottles, so you keep refilling the plastic bottles over and over, rather than buy this from some foreign company that's making a good profit. Maybe the village now has its own system, but maybe the upfront cost is very high, so maybe we have to get a loan. Somehow we need a financing system. What is the finance system? But we worked out that the payback period can be quite short. So I guess there needs to be a business manager in the village that can manage the cost recovery in the payback period.
Okay. Saya ada yang mau bertanya? Ayo. Siapa yang dari Wonogiri, dari Gunung Kidul harusnya bertanya dong.
Yang nggak punya air.
Itu Pak, yang kekurangan air selama ini. Kan saya di Jogja sekarang ya, iya. Sekarang memang di Jogja, sekarang di depannya ada botol minum.
Prof Martin, what about the mineral content of desalination water?
Which one was that, sorry?
The mineral, the content, yeah.
Yeah, this is, it has, depending on the membrane you choose, you can get anywhere between, 99 to 99.7% removal. So you get removal of, 99% of the salts. Yeah. So you can get it down to definitely less than 200 ppm, probably less than 50 ppm, but certainly enough for drinking water. So as long as you get it down to less than 1200 ppm, it's palatable, better than the brackish well water, and you can probably easily get it less than 500 ppm.
But 99.7, right? Up to, okay.
Yeah. And this is with very high pressure.
Really depend on the area, or only depend on the membrane that you use?
It depends on the membrane, depends on the recovery rate and the pressure applied to the membrane. In these small systems, village scale, it's best to keep the membrane running at a low pressure and a lower recovery rate, and then you decrease the amount of maintenance, and you decrease the amount of times that you have to replace them, because the membrane is very expensive as well.
Yeah.
So if you keep it at a low recovery rate, maybe only 30%, and you discharge a lot of the seawater back into the ocean, then you're not putting so much pressure on the membrane, and it will last a longer time. But in the industrial scale systems, the big system they use in the city, they have a much higher recovery rate, much more pressure, because they're trying to get the water through quickly for the big city.
Yeah, for the low pressure, so how long it take to have like 2 liters?
Yeah, well, this depends on the size of the membrane and the size of the solar panels, how much energy you have to run it. So all of these are different factors that we use to size the system. And if you run the system at high pressure, you may need to replace the membrane every 2 years. But if you run it at a lower pressure, the membrane could last up to 7 years. So in the overall life cycle cost of the system, this will keep it lower. You just run it carefully at low pressure. It means you have to have a bigger membrane. You buy a large one, but you run at low pressure, you have low recovery rate, but the membrane lasts a long time.
So for the example that you saw lately, I mean, it is small, right? Small scale, right? Yeah. So how long it took to have 2 liters of
that one is, I think that one there is capable of doing up to about 30 litres per hour. So this means, obviously in less than an hour, you're doing a 15th, maybe in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
5 minutes, you're getting 2 litres in that system.
But can you operate it? For like 2 hours long, then without any stop?
Yeah, you can run that as long as the sun is shining. So you might get 8 to 10 hours a day.
But only you need to set it in 10, low pressure.
30, so you get like 200 or 300 litres per day from that system, and that is enough for that's 30 people.
That's
so one small system is like 30 people. So if have 30 people all putting in a little bit of money each day, how many of these bottles do you want each day?
Yeah.
So if you say, what one person drinks, maybe 10 of these a day?
Yes.
So how much is that times 10? Are you willing to pay that much? If you pay that much money into the village fund each day, then the village might be able to have its own water system. But maybe the payback period is 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. But for a public system, the payback period could be longer, but the people don't mind. But if it's a private enterprise, if you're trying to make a profit, you may want a payback period maybe only 2 years, because you want to recover your investment quickly and make a profit.
Oh iya, sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry for those who join online. Bapak Ibu yang join secara online. Mohon maaf tadi saya cuma menyapanya Pak Nugroho. Monggo Bapak Ibu, ini ada banyak anyone silakan raise hand. Yeah, we have 123 participants. Yeah, 100 participants join online because 20 are coming from here. Bapak Ibu yang hadir secara online, monggo. Oh ya, yeah. How about solar thermal based desalination plant instead PV based plant?
Yeah, this is a good question. This is the common technology, solar thermal distillation, that we've used for many, many years already in the Middle East. And this is less energy efficient, but in that part of the world, it probably didn't matter all these years because they have so much oil and gas. And so they can burn all the oil and the gas for thermal distillation methods. They're very, very common, and how the people in the Middle East got their fresh water for many, many decades. But now even in the Middle East, as we get more conscious of energy use and CO2 pollution to the atmosphere, carbon pollution, and because of the falling cost of reverse osmosis membranes, the reverse osmosis system is becoming preferred as well. So the thermal, unless you have a renewable source of thermal, maybe you can use geothermal in Indonesia because you have many volcanoes. Maybe you could have a thermal distillation system because you don't have to burn any oil or gas for that, or coal. So because we're always trying to minimize our dependency on fossil fuels and avoid the carbon pollution. So maybe the thermal system may be in decline compared to reverse osmosis, but if we can find a sustainable thermal energy source like geothermal, maybe that is an opportunity.
But this you mentioned is about fossil fuel based thermal desalination system, right? How about if we use solar thermal? I mean, is it possible?
Yeah, the if this solar thermal, sorry, maybe I got the terminology mixed up before. I should have said thermal distillation. Yeah, but solar thermal, yeah, is using the sun's energy. Sorry, yeah, that was a very popular early technology in the 1960s, but it's quite low efficiency. You know, because normally you're using the glass plate. Normally, if this is the one that's being referred to, it's a solar distillation is relying on the flat plate collector, and it has the sun shining through the glass plate, and then the evaporation of the water, and then the condensation on the underside of the glass. Maybe that's the one that's the question. Yeah, they collect the evaporation, the condensation. Yeah, that one is very low efficiency, but low cost as well. But it has low production rate. Yeah, so it can be good for remote areas, you know, for a simple technology to build it like that. Yeah, for survival. Yeah, this is what the commando soldiers do when they get lost in the desert. They put the plastic on the hole and some leaves there, and they collect it overnight, and then they can survive the next day. But the low production rate, I think, limits this for the cities and the villages, because it's got a very low productivity. Yeah, but when we add thermal energy to that from a heat source like fossil fuels, we can get massive production, but the cost, of course, is the carbon pollution.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, Pak Oki. Yeah, Pak Oki. I cannot see you in the screen. Pak Oki. Yeah, anyone who want to ask directly? Siapa, Mas Marta?
Yes, me.
Ada yang raise hand?
Nice to meet you again, Professor Martin. After so long. Hello, Prof. Martin. Yeah, what I'm asking, sorry.
Hello, pussycat.
Yes.
Pussycat. Sorry, that's I use headphone. I don't know why this setting is like that. But
Silakan.
what I'm asking you about the solar thermal is because actually the technology for solar thermal now is advancing, especially Australia. I think have a lot of development in solar thermal collectors. So even we can make power plant. So there's some technology on combined power plant and desalination plant using the solar thermal base because of high technology, advanced technology of solar panel, solar collector, solar thermal collectors. But what I'm asking is, how about in? I heard that Australia also developed that. How about in your understanding about that technology availability and maybe affordability current time? Yeah.
Well, I think
Am I clear?
for the how
Hello?
to combine, yeah, how to combine the method between the solar thermal and then solar panel base.
Yeah, this is, yeah, I saw this technology, solar thermal PV, and so you have the photovoltaic module and you link in hydronic tubing behind that as well. So because of course, one of the constraints to photovoltaic energy output on the module is as the temperature increases, the output starts to decrease. So if you can keep the panel cool, you'll maintain a high energy output from the photovoltaic. And if you do this by cooling water, and then the water gets heated, but that is just for hot water, but may not is enough, not hot enough for distillation, but maybe that is a preheating solution. So I'm not sure if Oki was asking this question. Is this the question?
Pak Oki, silakan kalau perlu direspon balik, Pak. Silakan Pak. Tadi ada beberapa yang kurang jelas. Jadi tadi Pak Martin sudah merespon sedikit mengenai combine itu mungkin tidak terlalu visible ya tadi ya, hanya karena kekuatannya yang kurang. Silakan Pak Oki, kalau mau respon balik.
Pauki maybe get the problem on the Wi-Fi because he's in Turkey right now.
Okay. In Turkey. He is in Turkey. Wow. Oke, so Ibu Tri dan Ibu Forita, mungkin ada respon atau feedback dari apa yang sudah tadi disampaikan oleh Prof. Martin, Pak Nugroho juga. Yang terutama ini spesifik daerah ya, karena Ibu Tri dari DIY, terus Bu Forita nanti dari Jawa Tengah, mungkin ada isu-isu spesifik lain yang perlu ditambahkan atau dikomentari, silahkan Ibu.
Yes, I think only short comment. In Java Island, Pak Martin, we have two coastal area. In southern coastal area in Yogyakarta province, and then the northern area is in Central Java. You know, all of the central based on the agricultural system. So I think because we work in the agricultural system, we need to know about your idea about the technology to using the water for the agricultural system. I think that is from us. Bu Furita maybe want to, yeah, okay. I think that is enough because already in 3 p.m. It's enough 2 hours.
Ini kebangetan ya, mahasiswa banyak banget ini. Gak ada
Yeah,
satupun yang bertanya.
I think the students
ini.
maybe post graduate.
Nanti tak laporkan Kaprodi ini. Tak laporkan Pak Kaprodi sebenarnya. Pak Kaprodi MPL sama Pak Kaprodi L. Satu ini.
Oke. Bu Furita ingin bertanya, but please in English ya.
Oke.
Terima kasih. Jadi Pak Wahyu, karena kami backgroundnya di pertanian, jadi kan beberapa wilayah di Jawa Tengah itu banyak yang kekurangan air, sehingga hanya mampu untuk sistem atau pola tanamnya hanya 2 kali. Nah, sementara untuk meningkatkan produktivitas kan ada perlu peningkatan indeks pertanaman. Walaupun dari pemerintah itu sudah memberikan banyak bantuan sumur bor, dalam kenyataannya itu hanya mampu cuma setengah musim. Jadi tidak bisa, banyak yang belum sampai panen. Nah, barangkali ada teknologi dari Pak Martin bagaimana supaya dalam penyimpanan airnya yang di luar embung loh ya. Ini mungkin apakah ada harus perlakuan di lahannya atau bagaimana? Itu. Terima kasih.
Yeah, Prof. Martin. So in Central Java, and I think also in Jogja, we have this common situation that many area is quite less in the ground recharge area, right? And how to supply the water, and then so in agriculture, it's affect to the cultivation periods. We only like twice per year to harvest the crops. And government, also, for example, in Jogja, we already have this program so-called the village dam, Ambung Desa. So village dam, so every village, if they have the surface water area, then they can create a small dam to provide the irrigation. However, the problem is it cannot fully support into like multiplying the cultivation period to be like triple or 4 times per year. So is there any innovation or technology that perhaps could be used as the solution, or at least to increase more productivity of this agricultural area?
Is the cropping for rice or
for rice?
Mostly for rice.
Mostly for rice.
Yeah. Yeah. And horticulture. Yeah. The rice is something I know very little about, because in Western Australia, where I come from, we don't have this rice growing where you have the flooded irrigation paddocks, but we do have the Harvey irrigation system, which is south of Perth, and but this is not so much for growing rice. This is more for paddocks for livestock. You know, they flood irrigate the paddocks sometimes. So that is, but we have many different horticultural systems and many innovations there. So the only thing that I can think of that may be of interest that happened in Western Australia, and of course in the eastern states where you have the Murray-Darling irrigation system, they do grow a lot of rice there. But, you know, this is the other side of the country, and I know very little about that. But I can tell you something interesting that happened in Western Australia on the Harvey irrigation system that may be of interest. When we started to get the drying climate in Perth and we were running out of water, the strategies that we developed was not only the seawater desalination plants, which, as Nagroho pointed out, are very expensive, and true, this is the most expensive new water source. Even though it's climate independent, it's still very expensive. It is getting cheaper, but it's very expensive. So the water agency in Western Australia looked at many different solutions, and when they looked at the Harvey irrigation system, they saw that when they were taking the water from the dam and then running that through the open irrigation channels to the farm paddocks, they realised that a lot of water was being lost, wasted from the evaporation and the infiltration into the ground. So there was a lot of wastage. So the Water Corporation, which is the state government enterprise that owns the water systems in Western Australia, they negotiated with the Harvey irrigation system, and they said, if we give you $17 million to line those irrigation channels with plastic piping, you still get the same amount of water to your farm paddocks, but we no longer get the losses. So we don't waste any water for the evaporation or the infiltration. And that loss we can calculate, and we will take that water to Perth, to the city, and give it for the city drinking water supply if we pay for you to line the irrigation channels. So it was a negotiated deal. And so the water that was normally lost to evaporation, and we could take that for the city, for the drinking water supply. So, but I don't know exactly your systems here, whether that example is relevant.
Maybe I will explain about the dry land in Yogyakarta. Like in Yogyakarta, in Bantul, we know that rainwater harvest, and catch the rainwater in the embung, we call embung, or maybe small dam. Yeah, small dam with the geomembrane to catch the rainwater to get the irrigation from the farmer. Not only paddy, rice, also horticulture like chili, salad in southern coastal. We already get the rainwater harvest. We call like it rainwater harvest with the embung, mini dam ya. Apa istilahnya embung kalau di ini? Mini dam. Yeah. Maybe in Nawungan village. Yeah, we have one area of the salad agricultural farmer, and we use only water with the rainwater harvest. Yeah.
So that one for horticulture, there's some other good ones for horticulture as well that what happened over the years in Australia is in the horticultural crops, maybe it's fruit trees, grapevines, some types of vegetables, like the chili as well. Instead of using the overhead sprinklers, again, you're losing a lot of water for evaporation, and it's not going exactly on the root zone either. So it's going all over the land, not exactly where the roots are. So then we changed to drip line irrigation, and we use the drip line tubing, because then the tubing can get the water exactly via the drippers to the root zone on the plant. So this saved a lot of water doing it that way. And then because it's an automated system, you can put the rain sensor device and you can put the soil moisture sensor, and if it's raining, well then the irrigation doesn't turn on. Or if the soil already has the right level of moisture in it, the soil moisture sensor will tell the irrigation controller not to turn on. So there's a number of technologies like this that can help to save the water in the horticultural example.
Because the high investment, so we always plan the high commodity, high value commodity. Horticulture is high value commodity. So I think chili, salad, onion is a high value commodity.
Yeah. Matur nuwun Bu Tri. And yeah, I think everyone already been sleep. Well understood, Prof. Martin. Well understood about exactly what you define, what you explain in the last two slides. So we cannot expect any further question. Yeah, even if I think I haven't asked another audience. Joy, do you have any?
We have, dia tuh.
Oh, okay. Good. Nanti daftar ke Mbak Zakiah untuk bonusnya.
Cek.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity. So I am Ramadan. So I just came here because my friends invite me to join in this dialogue. But I interest about that Prof. Martin say about the technology that help people to get more water. But I was asking about the society itself that established that technology itself. But I think um, the biggest problem in Indonesia is not only about the technology, but also about the people that we facing that the highest gap between East and West in Indonesia. So that technology that you was presented is about water desalination that can help people at the small village. But I don't think that it would be sustained because, you know, um, because how people could be established that tools, how people could be maintaining that tools and anything like that. I don't think that it would be useful because and we can see that now very much people that have a looks a new technology, but they are still on the traditional models to get water, and I think that is a biggest problem in Indonesia. Not only about technology, but also about society itself. I think it's that. Thank you very much.
Hey, it's a really good question. It's a really good question, and I did also before ever coming to Indonesia, I also did many years of working in the traditional communities in Australia, in the remote areas, with the Aboriginal people, where it's very poor, and people living in very difficult conditions, especially in the desert area, and having very little housing, very poor water supply, and so on, very difficult conditions. And um, we saw the conditions in the villages in eastern Indonesia as well. The really thing is, what else do you see in these villages? What else do you see in these villages that is similar, both in very poor, but similar both in Australia and in Indonesia? What is it that the people are having? What's this one here? What? Yeah. Everyone has one of those. This is one of the most advanced technologies in the world, because this device is so powerful. Imagine all the things that this one little box can do. And the people in the remote village are using that. How do they figure that out? These people are very smart, because this technology is there as well. And the one time I went to a very remote village in Sulawesi, and it was also a tourism village. And the people that we met there in the village running the water cooperative, we asked them, do you think this solar powered desalination system will work here? And they didn't really know much about it. And then they said, well, there's one fellow at the moment, he is installing a desalination plant in the hotel. There's a hotel there. So we went there, and it was a very big coincidence, because he was there in the basement of the hotel installing a reverse osmosis desalination plant. At the same time we were visiting. It's a very big coincidence. So we said, can we go and see him? So we went there with the students, and we saw him there in the basement installing that plant. Normally the hotel was getting the water from the well, but they decided as well they wanted one of these desalination plants. And we went there, and I asked him, wow, you're doing a really good job here. How did you learn how to build this plant? He said, oh, I got my phone and I watched the YouTube videos. He didn't go to the university and get a degree. He was a local person that learned how to do the desalination from the YouTube video. He was a really smart guy, and he was building. He went and bought all the parts from Makassar, and some solar panels and took them there. And then the other thing we sometimes see in these remote villages, some of the people have a solar panel and they did the wiring themselves. So people can be very innovative and actually they're fixing many things themselves anyway. They're running a fishing boat with a motor, they have to fix the motor themselves. All these people are doing many interesting things, you know. So eventually I think if the technology like the solar-powered desalination plant, it may seem complex, but it's just made of many simple components that can be assembled, just like the outboard motor that they use in the fishing village. They keep that running because they keep fixing it, and they're very smart. And I think it's one day maybe the same with the solar desalination. The people can figure out how to do this themselves. And maybe here in the university, we just learn how all the technology works. We do the research, how we can make it better and simple. And then we go and work with the people in the village to see if this can work for them and how they want to use it. And then one day you might have like a regional distributor, like the guy that we met in Sulawesi, and he's helping the people in the village to manage the systems as well. And if they need some new spare parts, he can help them get the parts, you know, and so you can maintain a system like this. Anyway, that is just my thinking in response to your question, because it's a very good question.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Martin. Yeah, because I think time is running out for today. And thank you so much for everyone who participated. I think what Prof. Martin mentioned for the last, yeah, I regard that as your closing statement, because it's very, very, very good point that either you can close the technology or you can close the perspective of the people, right, on how to understand the technology. I mean, it is the mandate given by Prof. Martin in this sharing session for all of the students, because they have the duty and the opportunity to make close the technology or close the way people in the village, people in the so many area to think about that there is a technology, there is a way to solve the problem. Ya, saya pikir itu ya rekan-rekan semua di sini dan Bapak Ibu yang hadir secara daring. Tadi sharing session dari Prof. Martin saya pikir sangat bagus dan bermanfaat untuk bahwa memang ada banyak inovasi yang bisa kita pikirkan, dan saya pikir ini sebagai langkah pertama untuk kerjasama dari BRIN, terutama untuk pusat riset sistem pembangunan berkelanjutan ya, dan life cycle ya. Saya lebih suka life cycle assessment ya. Kalau penilaian dalur hidup itu kok daur hidupnya yang agak lupa. Tapi kalau LCA itu life cycle assessment itu lebih nyambung nyantol. Jadi saya pikir ke depan dengan kerjasama yang baik dengan PSLH dan pusat riset dari BRIN ini bisa banyaklah kontribusi yang ditularkan ya, termasuk juga ini nanti peran-peran mahasiswa ini. Oke, saya pikir itu. Terima kasih sekali, thank you so much Prof. Martin, ya, Ibu Tri, Ibu Forita, Pak Pram, dan Pak Nugroho serta Bapak Ibu yang hadir secara daring sudah bergabung sejak awal hingga akhir. Saya akan akhiri. Terima kasih, salam sehat semuanya, dan semoga kita bisa bertemu di lain waktu dalam topik yang berbeda dan sebagai tindak lanjut lebih tadi dari kegiatan bareng dari BRIN dengan PSLH. Saya akan akhiri. Selamat sore. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih untuk semuanya yang sudah hadir di dalam gedung ini di Pusat Studi Lingkungan Hidup. Terima kasih untuk seluruh narasumber, terima kasih Pak Wahyu, terima kasih. Thank you, sir. Baik, kita memasuki acara yang terakhir, yaitu penutup. Marilah kita tutup acara pada siang hari ini. Berdoa menurut agama dan kepercayaan kita masing-masing. Berdoa, dipersilahkan. Terima kasih, saya selaku pembawa acara kurang lebihnya mohon maaf. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.